I gave up everything for a fake move to London, then exposed their Ponzi scheme and took them down. The decision to uproot my life came faster than expected. A tech startup's recruitment email landed in my inbox, offering a senior developer role in their new London office. The promise of a high salary, covered relocation, and a fresh start in a global city was enough to make me act. Within weeks, I sold my house in Austin, traded my car for cash, and quit my stable but unexciting job at a local software firm. My life fit into 2 suitcases, each packed with clothes, a laptop, and a few personal items. The plan was simple: work remotely for 3 months, then move to London with everything arranged: visa, housing, flight. The startup's HR team sent contracts, conducted video interviews, and shared polished mock-ups of a sleek office in Shoreditch. Every detail aligned perfectly. But the flight date arrived, and the HR contact vanished. The company's website disappeared. The phone number was dead. My savings were gone, spent on a deposit for a London apartment that didn't exist. I stood in my friend's spare bedroom, staring at my suitcases, realizing I had been scammed. What I thought was the start of a new chapter was the beginning of a nightmare. Worse, I couldn't shake the feeling that the truth behind the scam was bigger and darker than I imagined. The scam began with a single message on a freelance platform where I had posted my portfolio. A recruiter from a company called Nexlify Technologies reached out, claiming they were launching a London office and needed developers with my experience. The initial email was professional, with a detailed job description and a salary nearly double my current pay. They offered a relocation package that included a visa, housing, and a signing bonus. I had 3 video calls with a woman named Sarah, who presented herself as the head of HR. She showed me floor plans of the office, sent a contract with Nexlify's logo, and even provided references from supposed employees. Everything seemed legitimate. I signed the contract and started remote work, submitting code for a project that felt real. They asked me to pay a deposit for the London apartment, explaining it was standard for international hires and would be reimbursed with the bonus. I wired $8,000 from my savings and took a $5,000 loan to cover travel costs. The process moved fast, too fast, I later realized. By the time I was ready to fly, I had sold my house at a loss, cleared out my bank account, and left my job. The day before my flight, Sarah stopped responding. I called the number she used, but it was disconnected. Panic set in, but I still believed there was an explanation. Reality hit when I contacted the freelance platform. They informed me Nexlify had cut communication a week earlier, leaving no forwarding information. I checked the company's website, which had been updated with press releases just days before, but it was gone. LinkedIn profiles for Sarah and other employees were either deleted or led to blank pages. I spent hours searching for any trace of Nexlify, but every digital footprint had vanished. My friend let me crash at his place in Austin while I figured out my next move. I felt humiliated, replaying every email and call in my head, wondering how I missed the signs. The scam wasn't just a random hit, it was calculated. I started digging online and found a Reddit thread in r/scams where someone described a nearly identical experience: a tech job in London, a relocation deposit, and a company that disappeared. Then I found another post on X, then a comment on a freelance forum. There were at least 10 others, all in tech or design, all scammed the same way. The pieces didn't add up to a lone con artist. This was organized, and I needed to know how deep it went. The deeper I dug, the clearer it became that this was no isolated scam. I spent weeks scouring Reddit, X, and freelance platforms, compiling a list of victims. There were 14 of us confirmed, spread across the US, Canada, and Australia, all targeted with the same playbook: a high-paying tech job in London, a polished recruitment process, and a request for a relocation deposit. I created a private Discord server to connect with the others. We shared contracts, emails, and screenshots of video calls. Patterns emerged. The HR reps used different names but had similar voices or appeared in low-quality video feeds that hid their faces. The contracts all followed the same template, with minor tweaks to company names: Nexlify, TechVantage, Innovery Solutions. I tracked down one victim, a UI designer from Seattle, who had recorded a call with Sarah. Her voice matched a recording another victim had from a rep named Claire. The company's websites, now offline, had been registered through the same hosting provider. I wasn't a detective, but I couldn't stop. Every new detail felt like a step toward answers. One victim, a cybersecurity analyst, suggested we pool our evidence and hire a professional to trace the digital trail. We crowdfunded $2,000 to cover the cost. The cybersecurity firm we hired uncovered a goldmine. They traced the IP addresses from the emails and video calls to servers in Florida, Nevada, and Colorado. The domains for the fake companies were registered under a shell corporation called Pinnacle Ventures, which had no physical address or employee records. The firm also found call logs linking the phone numbers to a VoIP service used by call centers. The money we sent for deposits had been funneled through multiple bank accounts, some in the US, others offshore. The firm's report suggested a Ponzi-like structure. New victims' deposits were used to pay reimbursements to earlier ones, creating the illusion of a legitimate operation. One victim had even received a partial refund before the company vanished, which convinced her to trust them. The scale was staggering. At least $200,000 had been stolen from our group alone, and there were likely more victims we hadn't found. I organized our findings into a detailed report, including timelines, screenshots, and the firm's analysis. We submitted it to the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center, hoping for action but expecting little. I wasn't ready to give up, but the weight of my losses, my home, my savings, my stability, made every day harder. The waiting period after submitting the report to the FBI was agonizing. I checked my email daily, expecting nothing but silence. My life was on hold, living out of my friend's spare room, taking freelance gigs to cover basic expenses, and avoiding questions from family about why I wasn't in London. The other victims and I stayed in touch through Discord, sharing updates and frustrations. Some had lost more than I had. One guy from Toronto sold his condo and was now renting a basement apartment. Others had taken out loans they couldn't repay. The group's determination kept me going. We continued digging, cross-referencing every piece of evidence. One victim found an old LinkedIn profile for a supposed Nextlify employee that hadn't been deleted. It led to a real person in Colorado who claimed to be a freelance recruiter but denied any connection to the scam. His denial didn't add up. His name appeared in email headers from 3 victims. Another breakthrough came when a victim visited one of the supposed office addresses listed in a contract. It was a vacant storefront in a Florida strip mall, leased under Pinnacle Ventures. These discoveries fueled our resolve. 2 months after filing the report, the FBI contacted me. They had traced one of the bank accounts to a real individual who had made a sloppy mistake, using a personal email to open it. That crack started unraveling the operation. The FBI's investigation confirmed what the cybersecurity firm suspected: a Ponzi-style fraud ring operating across multiple states. The group behind it had been running scams for at least 2 years, posing as tech startups, relocation firms, and even investment companies. They targeted professionals with in-demand skills, knowing we'd jump at high salaries and international opportunities. The deposits we paid were shuffled through a web of accounts to pay fake reimbursements, or cover their tracks. The operation relied on a constant influx of new victims to keep the cycle going. When too many of us started asking questions or visiting fake office addresses, the group shut down Nextlify and its aliases, planning to relaunch under new names. The FBI identified 4 key players, including the man in Colorado whose email we'd found. Arrests followed in Florida and Nevada, with warrants issued for 2 others who had fled. I was called to provide a statement and later testified in court about my experience, how I sold my house, wired the deposit, and uncovered the scam through our group's efforts. The courtroom was sterile, the process slow, but seeing the perpetrators' faces made it real. They weren't masterminds, just ordinary people who exploited trust for profit. Partial restitution was ordered, but I knew I'd never recover most of my losses. The aftermath of the arrests brought mixed emotions. The court process dragged on for months, with hearings and depositions eating up time I didn't have. I was still rebuilding my life, taking on short-term coding contracts to pay off the loan I'd taken for the fake relocation. My friend's patience was wearing thin, and I knew I couldn't stay in his spare room much longer. The Discord group remained active, a lifeline for sharing updates and venting. Some victims were angrier than others, frustrated by the slow pace of justice. We learned more about the scam's scope through court documents. The fraud ring had targeted over 50 people, netting nearly $1 million before collapsing. They used stolen identities for some of the fake HR profiles, which explained why Sarah and Claire seemed so real. The Colorado recruiter turned out to be a middleman, paid to pose as a legitimate contact while the ringleaders stayed hidden. Restitution payments started trickling in, but mine was only $3,000, barely a dent in my losses. The real victory was knowing the operation was dismantled. I moved into a small studio apartment, signing a lease with money from a new contract. It wasn't much, but it was mine. The experience left scars. Every job offer now felt like a trap, every email a potential lie. The conclusion came with a quiet sense of closure, though the scars remained. I settled into my studio apartment, working a local contract job that paid enough to cover rent and slowly rebuild my savings. The restitution money helped, but it was a fraction of what I'd lost: my house, my car, my financial security. The Discord group disbanded over time, as victims moved on or drifted away, but a few of us stayed in touch, bonded by the ordeal. I read about the final convictions in the case. 3 of the 4 main perpetrators were sentenced to prison, with the 4th still at large. The FBI estimated the fraud ring had targeted hundreds of people globally, though only a fraction came forward. I stopped trusting recruitment emails, no matter how polished they seemed. Every job offer now gets a thorough background check, company records, physical addresses, even a quick call to verify. The hardest part wasn't the money, it was how easily I dismantled my life for a lie I didn't question. I had been so eager for a new chapter that I ignored the gaps in the story. Helping bring the scammers down was the only thing that eased the guilt. It didn't erase the loss, but it gave me a reason to keep going, knowing I stopped them from ruining more lives.